Welcome in on a Monday, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. Israel pounding Lebanon with airstrikes targeting Hezbollah. Iranian leaders accusing Israel at this hour of laying traps to draw Iran into a larger conflict. We are live, watching closely high-level meetings happening at the White House over this and many more matters in the Middle East today. Plus, temporary fix. Lawmakers strike a deal to keep the government running. But the question is, this time, for how long? You're watching CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Right off the top, President Joe Biden welcomes the United Arab Emirates president to the White House for a meeting as the world watches right now a very tense situation playing out in the Middle East. In fact, it is getting more tense by the minute. 274 people killed overnight in Lebanon by Israeli airstrikes, and you're seeing some of those strikes right now, seen from a rooftop there. More than 1,000 injured in what Lebanon is calling one of their deadliest days since 2006. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay reports Israel's target once again is squarely at Hezbollah militants.
Israel vowed this morning its airstrikes in southern Lebanon will continue. It's the latest in escalating clashes with Hezbollah over the past week. The Israel military says it's targeting weapons like cruise missiles and claims some of them are hidden inside residential buildings. Over the weekend, Hezbollah showered northern Israel with rockets and drones. Most were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome system. That was in response to an Israeli strike on Friday that killed top Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Akil, given a hero's burial yesterday in the same Hezbollah stronghold where he died. Israel claims he was planning a massacre, one like the Hamas massacre of October 7th, allegedly planned to take place in northern Israel, where ongoing clashes have forced more than 60,000 Israelis to flee. But tensions remain high across the region. In the occupied West Bank yesterday, during a live broadcast, Israeli forces shut down the Ramallah bureau of broadcaster Al Jazeera as a journalist read the warrant. The Qatar-based network is accused of supporting and inciting terrorism, which it flatly denies. But as the Israeli military says, the center of gravity is shifting north towards Hezbollah. For the first time on this front, civilians there have begun receiving text messages from the Israel Defense Forces warning them to stay clear of Hezbollah targets. Reed?
Chris Livesay, thank you so much. So just to prove our point that things are getting more tense by the moment, just seconds ago, the Israeli military carried out another targeted attack, this time in Beirut. We don't have a lot of details about this, but you can bet at this meeting at the White House, that will be one topic of conversation. So let's stay in Washington, D.C. right now, where President Joe Biden is hosting the president of the United Arab Emirates. They're going in the White House right now. In fact, right before that, here's what the president had to say just moments ago.
Our countries have a strategic partnership rooted in decades of close cooperation and friendship, and I welcome the chance to open a new chapter. UAE is a nation of trailblazers, always looking to the future, always making big bets, and there's something our countries have in common and our people have in common. In fact, it's a cornerstone of our growing cooperation in AI and clean energy and space and investing in infrastructure to connect regions. And for many years, our forces also stood shoulder to shoulder in the same most difficult places. Today, we honor that legacy and carry our relationship forward as UAE is going to become a major defense partner of the United States, joining only one other country, India. We also will discuss our efforts to end the war in Gaza and a number of regional issues. I've been briefed on the latest developments in Israel and Lebanon. My team is in constant contact with their counterparts, and we're working to de-escalate in a way that allows people to return to their homes safely.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is always right where the news is, especially on a Monday. Nancy, thank you for joining us live on the stream. Okay, so that meeting there obviously front-loaded with much to talk about what's going on in the Middle East.
Absolutely, and the UAE is a critical and growing ally for the U.S. in a very tricky part of the world, in the Middle East. And in fact, this meeting that you just saw in the Oval Office, it's the first time that a leader of the United Arab Emirates has come here to Washington to meet with the President of the United States since the UAE was formed in 1971. So it's an important day, obviously, as you heard the President say. Israel and its ongoing conflict with Hamas and now with Hezbollah in Lebanon is at the top of the agenda today. The UAE has been instrumental in getting Gaza residents out who are injured or who are sick, and it's seen, Reed, as an ally that would be very instrumental in helping to rebuild Gaza after some kind of ceasefire deal was struck. The challenge is that just last week, the UAE said that it would not be involved in rebuilding unless there was a plan in place for a Palestinian state. And that puts a lot of pressure on the Israelis in particular.
And meanwhile, we are in an election season, not knowing which way we will go. And, you know, the White House where you are, they're definitely in wrapping up mode. We know President Biden held one of his last cabinet meetings last week. Now he's getting ready for one of his final speeches. What do we expect to hear?
Right. He's going to be speaking in New York at the annual gathering of the UN General Assembly. So he'll be speaking to dozens and dozens of world leaders. And because this is his last speech as president to the UNGA, you can expect, Reed, that he'll want to lay out his philosophy and what he sees as his biggest achievements on the world stage over the past 4 years. So he'll talk, for example, about the fact that he brought together this coalition of world leaders to support Ukraine and that they still do. He'll talk about the fact that he has reignited difficult diplomatic conversations with China. But I think first and foremost, the issue on his mind and on everyone's minds at the General Assembly is the Middle East and the growing tensions between not just Israel and Hamas, but now Israel and Hezbollah, and what can be done about it. So I think you're going to hear a lot from him on that front as well.
Nancy Cordes, thank you so much for joining us on the stream on a Monday. We appreciate you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to go live outside of the federal courthouse in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the man suspected in the second assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump is appearing right now for a bond hearing. In fact, our very own Manny Bajorquez is inside that courtroom. He's watching it all for us right there behind those doors and those windows. You see heavy police presence outside the courthouse. As soon as he wraps up listening at that hearing and taking the notes, he will step in front of the camera that you are looking through right now, live and in real time, to let us know what happened in court and what happens next for that suspect. Meanwhile, we have new numbers from the FBI just in ahead of the presidential election. You know, crime has become a big issue on the campaign trail. So here are the actual numbers. Violent crime and property crime went down across the United States last year, although we did see a rise in auto thefts last year. When we come back, new CBS News polling shows one of the presidential candidates has an edge, while also at the same time raising tens of millions of dollars blocks away from Trump Tower. We're live on the campaign trail, and CBS News 24/7 continues. Smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic hurricane season, and our live monitors take you to Florida's Panama City Beach. Looks nice, right? Sunny and clear now, but it's the tropics, and they can be testy this time of year, Jess.
They really can. PCV looking really nice today, but that's not going to be the case as we head into the rest of this week's forecast. Yeah, the tropics are still active, and as we take a look right now what's happening, tropical cyclone, I should say it right, potential tropical cyclone 9 is still starting to gain some strength just south of Cuba right now. You can barely make it out, but that mess just to the south of Florida, that's what's going to impact them as we head into the coming days. So let's take a look at how that's going to really shape out for the panhandle of Florida as we head into the rest of this week's forecast. We're starting off with those sunny skies over there, but this system is starting to gain a lot of strength as it enters some warm sea surface temperatures just in between Cuba and the peninsula of Mexico. Now, as it continues to move its way into the Gulf of Mexico, notice how we could potentially see it at a Category 2 by making its way into Tallahassee and all throughout that panhandle of the Gulf, or excuse me, from Tampa stretching all the way over into Tallahassee and Panama City Beach just throughout the Gulf. Now, this continues to move its way north into the Gulf of Alaska, or excuse me, the Gulf of Mexico into Georgia. And as we watch Futurecast really starting to gain its strength, this is going to impact many communities all throughout that region. Now, keep in mind, it was just potential tropical cyclone 8 that really impacted areas like South and North Carolina. And then we're continuing to watch that really be the impact for those areas from Delaware down into Norfolk too, with flood advisories lasting into the evening hours tonight. I'm going to have more on what you can expect with this as we head into the coming days. But for now, over to you, Reed.
Well, our video monitors are watching the Pope's health overseas. The Pope canceling his appearances today as he battles some illness. The Pope has battled health problems in recent years, including spending time in the hospital last year for similar symptoms that were flu-like at the time. Moving on the map now to the United States and the state of North Carolina. The fallout continues over alleged comments made by North Carolina's Republican candidate for governor. Several top staffers from Mark Robinson's campaign walked off their jobs. Now, this after news broke about comments he allegedly made on a pornographic website more than a decade ago. By the way, Robinson, digging in his heels, he denies making any of those remarks. A threatened strike by dock workers at ports all along the East and Gulf Coast also threatens work at some of the busiest ports in North America. Their union wants wage increases as well as protections from what they call job-killing automation. The deadline for the deal, October 1st. State of California versus ExxonMobil. That state taking the energy giant to court over its alleged role in what they call the plastic pollution crisis. California Attorney General Rob Bonta accuses the oil giant of misleading the public about the effectiveness of plastic recycling. Exxon has not responded yet to the lawsuit, but we are watching. When we come back, what do Trump voters think about his recent false claims about Haitian migrants eating? Countdown to the November presidential election. Candidate Kamala Harris reports raising $27 million during a fundraiser in New York, while at the same time, once again, challenging Donald Trump to another debate. Trump refusing a do-over, saying it's too late, as early voting has already begun in some states. But by the way, we're also watching some national polling. CBS National News polls show Harris is up 4 points. Let's drill down to battleground states. She also has a slight edge there that is up from last month's 50-50 tie. We're also seeing in real time how Trump supporters feel about and believe about their candidate's false claims about Haitian immigrants eating pets during Trump's debate with Harris. Look at the numbers there on the right. 64% of Trump voters approve of those comments compared to 33% of voters overall. In another poll, CBS News found 69% of Trump voters believe those false claims about Haitians are probably true, compared to 37% of voters overall. CBS News campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi is in Smithton, Pennsylvania. Olivia, we have about a 4-second delay between my voice and your voice, but we understand today's talk is going to be about agriculture with a very conservative nonprofit group. Tell us about that.
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Reed, in very rural Pennsylvania, hence the delay in getting from me to you right now. But this is in the western part of the state, and Trump will be coming here to this family farm where he will be talking about Chinese threats to U.S. agriculture. So the focus here is to really talk about Chinese companies and the Chinese government buying farmland, buying U.S. companies that may affect our food supply. Now, this has become an issue in recent years, and Trump, when he was president, vowed to and did block any companies, Chinese companies, from buying U.S. agricultural products. That's the focus here really today. As part of this conservative nonprofit that is, he will be here along with his former ambassador to Germany, Rick Grinnell, and a few others. That's kind of the focus here today, why former President Donald Trump will be in this part of the state. It's also a crucial part of Pennsylvania where he needs to turn out people to vote. This is a big constituency for him here. They went for him in 16 and 20, but Trump really needs to turn out that vote here. It's part of the reason why he'll be stopping here later today.
And question for you, Trump is also set to hold another rally in Pennsylvania. He says no debate. CBS polls are not great for the president starting off on a new week. Any change in strategy anticipated, Olivia?
Now, I mean, the typical strategy right now is just ramping up campaign stops. We know Trump will be headed to that rally later today in Indiana, University of Pennsylvania. And then tomorrow he'll be going to Savannah, Georgia, and then later to North Carolina, capping out the week in Michigan. So really just campaigning harder with more campaign stops is the goal really of the former president's campaign at this moment. No change in specific posture, but more targeted specific remarks like you'll hear behind me today. That's kind of the goal. Talking about these issues that they believe American voters care about and that they feel that they have the edge on compared to Vice President Kamala Harris. They're trying to focus more on economy and immigration because that's what they feel is polling better, and that's what they feel like the American people will respond to them on.
All right, fascinating. Livery Rinaldi, CBS News campaign reporter, thank you so much. We know you're getting your Sky Miles in following the campaign. So let's jump now to the Harris campaign. They're now in Washington, and they're going to be talking about many, many things. And the person who knows most about that is CBS News political reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, our polling shows that these improvements are being attributed to the economy getting a little bit of a boost and a bounce in recent days. Tell us when Kamala Harris is expected to roll out any new policies on the economy.
Reed, good to be with you. Yeah, as you mentioned, our polling showed the Harris and her campaign are chipping away at that gap between her and Trump when it comes to voters who say that the economy is a major factor in their vote this November. You see Harris ranking now at 47% that believe she can best handle the economy compared to 53% with Trump. And it was a 13-point gap in August. So you see that shortening in part due to interest rates and gas prices going down, as well as her introducing her economic plan in the debate. They're looking to add to that during a stop in Pennsylvania on Wednesday. She said that she will be talking about housing and addressing grocery prices, but we'll look to see if there's any new parts of her economic plan that she talks about in that crucial swing state.
Okay, so from economic policy to foreign policy, Aaron, it seems like things are changing every minute with the Middle East. Tensions are definitely at a boil. We know that Harris is going to be meeting also today in Washington with the president of the UAE. What do we expect to come out of those meetings?
Yeah, we know her meeting with President Mohammed will address the goal of getting a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza. They're expected to address the civil war in Sudan as well, according to a White House official, as well as potential partnerships between the two countries for artificial intelligence and even space. But this is her fifth discussion now separately with the president of the UAE. She has another meeting on Thursday with President Zelensky, showing that she's having these individual meetings with these international leaders ahead of a potential term in the White House for her.
Aaron Navarro, thank you so much. Good to see you on the stream on a Monday. We hope to see you back very soon. Hey, video from our monitors take us to San Bernardino County, California, outside of Los Angeles, where exhausted firefighters continue to battle the line fire. It's burned nearly 40,000 acres. In fact, firefighters now say that they have this monster contained to about 60%, so that's a win over the weekend. That fire just one of more than 6,000 wildfires charring California. Look at that map right now. That shows you why firefighters in the state of California are exhausted. We've also got an update to two other fires commanding the headlines. The airport fire and the bridge fires in California, they've also been very difficult, but they are now at 81 and 71% containment. Let's jump the map now to the Midwest and a live look from Cleveland. Look at that. More rain is on the way, and those clouds look juiced, Jess.
There's a lot of active weather as we head into the coming days just over the Midwest, all throughout central Appalachia and, of course, the Ohio Basin, too. So let's start off with that. As we head outside today in those areas, temperatures are relatively cool right now. I mean, we're talking about 60s for the most part, just in regions like Kansas City all the way over into St. Louis. But those storms are starting to really act up all throughout that region. So as we take a look behind me, really what I want to show you is what they're gearing up for. The severe weather outlook is showing marginal conditions, actually, for the most part throughout that region, anywhere from Missouri all the way over into areas like Kentucky and down into Tennessee. Today and tomorrow, they are going to be dealing with some heavy thunderstorm activity. We could even see some hail and possible chances of tornadoes in certain regions. So let's dive into that a little bit further, starting off with Futurecast, showing how active these storms really are as they stretch throughout this state region. Kentucky really getting hit heavy, but when I show you the rainfall totals, they're really impressive because the more east they go, the more rainfall there is. Areas like Virginia all the way over into North Carolina, too. A very similar trend as we head into our Wednesday afternoon. all the way into our Thursday morning forecast. So here's our total rainfall outlook for the most part. Southern Indiana only getting close to around an inch, a very similar trend over near Ohio too, where we just saw that live look. But you continue to track off into the east. Here we go. And here's the impressive numbers. Roanoke, Richmond, stretching over into areas like Greensboro, all over 2 inches as we head into the coming days. I'll have more on that coming up in a bit. We also are anticipating large hail on the back end of that system closer to Missouri, all the way over into Arkansas and of course Tennessee as well. That and damaging winds are expected as we head into the afternoon hours today, Reed.
Mother Nature has a broad focus. To prove that, video just into our monitors out of Japan telling the story of deadly flooding. As you look at this aftermath, the land collapses there and so much devastation. We can tell you 6 have lost their lives, several others injured. Record rainfall brought deadly flooding and landslides in this coastal region of Japan. The storm washed away homes, forced thousands to have to evacuate over the weekend. Let's jump on the globe to England, where heavy rains are also a problem there. Look at a waterlogged England there. This is video out of Bedfordshire. Look at that, cars underwater. And in fact, look at this, London earlier this morning. Think about this, 1 month's worth of rain in London, and London gets a lot of rain, 1 month worth of rain recorded in just 24 hours in England and Wales. We're back in 2 minutes with a live conversation from Capitol Hill. Once again, lawmakers kick the can down the road. They've averted a government shutdown once again, but the devil's in the details. Nicole Killian breaks it all down. Looking live at Capitol Hill now, House Speaker Mike Johnson laying out his new plan to avert a government shutdown. His first one failed to pass. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us live. Nicole, what's Johnson's new strategy? We know this had some ups and downs, and how is it going to sell with lawmakers?
Yeah, well, the speaker is running a new play, if you will. That's kind of how he's couched this whole process. And so previously, this continuing resolution or short-term funding bill was initially supposed to last for 6 months. He's now cut that down to 3 months. And also, this package no longer includes the SAVE Act, which was an election integrity bill that Republicans were trying to push that would require proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. So that's gone away. And basically, this is kind of what Democrats wanted. It's a clean CR, if you will, that basically keeps the government operational through December 20th. The one concern some lawmakers have about this is that this is going to spark yet another funding fight at the end of the year. But House Republican aides say that they do not really want to see that. They don't want to have what's called a so-called Christmas omnibus, and they're confident even with this December 20th end date for this current funding package that that won't be the case.
I want to follow up with something that we left you with last week. You know, last week, the Secret Service director wouldn't name a number in the ask to Congress for how much. When we look at what Congress is working on relative to the Secret Service, are we at a number that can be reported, or where are we in that process?
Well, one thing that's notable about this short-term funding package is that it does include some additional money for Secret Service, approximately $230 million, and that is for immediate needs, particularly for campaign purposes in light of those 2 assassination attempts against former President Trump. So that will go to the Secret Service right away, assuming this bill passes. And, of course, that's on top of additional funding that Congress just passed late last week. So there will be this infusion of cash to the agency coming soon, but there are some lawmakers who feel that this is just throwing money at a problem. That's not really the direction they wanted to go in terms of some Republicans, but others feel that, you know, the agency has been under-resourced, and so they're certainly hoping that this makes a difference.
Nicole Killian, CBS News congressional correspondent, thank you so much for that. Let's go to Birmingham, Alabama now on the map, and an intense search happening. 4 shot to death, 17 others injured in gunfire that happened in the city's nightlife district. So Alabama officials telling us the public will now have to see about 6 figures for information that will lead authorities to the suspects.
If there ever was a time for us to come together as a community, this is the moment. But I want to make myself very clear on what the priority is. It is to hunt down, capture, arrest, and convict the people who are responsible for this mass shooting. You see, it's easy to see people in a line who most likely are unarmed, because to enter a club, you can't have a weapon on you. And so on one hand, as heinous as this was, it was also one of the most cowardly things we've also seen. They're cowards. And I think we're at a point where we can take people who don't care about lives, have a reckless disregard for lives, and also adding that they're cowards to do this in the way they did off the streets. And so everyone who wants to play detective on social media, everyone in the streets that's pointing the finger at the police and everyone else, this is your time to step up. And there's an ample award for you doing your part as a community member.
6 figures once again to the public for that tip that leads to arrest. So let's bring in CBS News correspondent Christian Benavides. He's live in Birmingham. Christian, police say this violence was targeted. Do we know why this happened while police look for the shooter or the shooters?
Reed, that's what police are looking into at this point. Officials have told us that 2 of the victims, in fact, have some criminal history, and they're looking into whether one of those 2 was the intended target here. They do believe that this was a targeted hit. They were looking for a specific individual, and they shot at that person. But keep this in mind, you've got 20 other people who were also hit. 4 people were killed. It's just an ongoing investigation at this point, certainly something that police are currently looking to the public. You mentioned that $100,000 reward. $50,000 of that is coming from the local Crime Stoppers, and that's the most they have ever offered.
So many bullets, so many people injured, and just once again in these United States. Christian Benavides, thank you so much. We will talk to you a little bit later in the week about this story and many others. Let's jump the map now to Georgia and the campus of Appalachian High School in Winder, Georgia. So here's your headline going into a new week. Students and staff back on campus some 3 weeks after the deadly mass shooting that took place there. So there's an open house today, and then classes are in session tomorrow under that same roof. As students go back, more counselors are on hand. They're also bringing in therapy dogs to help to sort of soften what is likely going to be a traumatic experience for some of the students and staff. Students can also expect to see more law enforcement officers.
On September the 4th, our community was brought to its knees. Unfortunately, our most vulnerable were attacked, our kids and our teachers in this building behind us. But what evil did not plan for was the resiliency and the strength that they have. They did not count for that, what our community does when they come together and when we try to heal. Today is a huge step for us healing.
So while they return to class, everyone at Appalachian High School mindful of 2 students and 2 teachers who will not be coming back after losing their lives in that September 4th attack. For that, their 14-year-old classmate faces murder charges. You know, all of this comes as parents in Kansas dealt with a scare after a shooting outside an elementary school in Wichita. We know 2 adults were hurt, but police say no children and no staff were involved in that incident. We are still learning to wait more as we see police there outside of a school and outside of police lines once again, all too familiar. Well, it's part of our promise to you here at CBS News 24/7. We watch our video monitors, our feeds from stations all across the country. You know, it's a big week in New York City with the United Nations General Assembly coming to Manhattan. So here's some of CBS News New York's coverage from that event earlier.
The start on the east side, where the high-level week at the UN General Assembly session is now underway. President Biden and other world leaders are on hand. This is making for several street closures, which are leading to traffic tie-ups in that area. Today, team coverage, Jessica Moore has a look at what's being discussed today, but we want to start with Shosh Bedrosian and the gridlock. Shosh?
Hey, Cindy. Well, you can certainly feel this gridlock alert the minute you are in Midtown. Even as you're driving on 50th Street heading southbound into Midtown, you can really start to feel it. And right now we're located on 42nd Street and 2nd Avenue. As you can see behind me, we're going to zoom in so you can see what one of these NYPD checkpoints looks like on this street. Now they're checking anybody who's going down here, but they're allowing people who do live on this block, who work on this block, and of course, if you have the proper credentials down this block. And of course, This happens as more than 130 world leaders, including President Joe Biden, are in town for the United Nations General Assembly. Now, the high-level gridlock alert sent out by the city's Department of Transportation officially started today and goes through September 27th. Now, drivers should expect increased security along with plenty of street closures, including security zones. Now, the NYPD says 57th and 42nd Streets will be limited to one lane in either direction from 2nd to 5th Ave. And First Avenue will be considered a frozen zone from 40th to 49th Streets. Also, the DOT says Midtown traffic will average just under 4 miles per hour.
We have about 1,200 cameras that's looking at different intersections at any given time.
It's madness, absolute madness. You can't take buses because everything's detoured, so you just walk all over town.
We have to remember we got to get up a little earlier to get it to work on time.
Now, the city is highly recommending anybody who is traveling in Midtown to use public transportation. You can head to our website for a full list of street closures and more details. We're live in Midtown. I'm Shosh Bedrosian, CBS News, New York.
And CBS News 24/7 will bring you all the headlines out of that very big week in the Big Apple. Our live monitors take you to Florida now, and a look from Panama City Beach. It's a clear day now, but we are keeping an eye on the tropics because, Jess, we know it is that time of year right now.
All right, let's take a quick look at what's happening for us as we head over into the tropics. A lot of active storms on their way as we head into the coming days, especially over in Florida. Potential tropical cyclone 9, soon to be named Hurricane Helene, is expected and anticipated to hit Florida around a Category 2 as we head into our Thursday forecast. Here's where it's at right now, though. Still starting to gain its strength as it moves its way towards the Yucatan Peninsula, just in between Cuba, with a lot of heavy rainfall expected in that region as we head into our Wednesday forecast. It continues to track north into the Gulf of Mexico, gaining a lot of strength due to warm sea surface temperatures. At that point, we are expected to see close to around Category 2 winds as it moves its way closer to Tallahassee, expected to hit as we head into Thursday evening. Like I said, right now this is a potential tropical cyclone, but it is expected to be named within the coming days, and we watch Futurecast closely because it's not only just the center, but those outer bands are anticipated to really bring in heavy rain, heavy winds all throughout the state of Florida as we head into this weekend's forecast. This is right around the corner, and it is moving quick as it moves its way to the north. Now, potential tropical cyclone 8, the one that moved into South Carolina just last week, it still caused a lot of damage. I mean, we were talking about storm surge, heavy rainfall, heavy winds throughout that region. And we keep a close eye on those coastal areas still because our flood advisories are in effect in areas like South Carolina all the way up into North Carolina, with high tides there stretching up into the northeast. A very similar trend from Philly all the way down into areas like Norfolk. We are keeping a close eye on those coastlines as well. However, they're not going to be impacted by this exact storm. I will have more on what you can expect coming up with that potential hurricane right around the corner. But for now, back to you, Reed.
We continue following the story of Coast Guard hearings involving that tragic 2023 OceanGate submersible implosion. Earlier today, this board of leaders you see right here, they heard from the co-founder of OceanGate about the vision of Titan owner Stockton Rush. That vision included more accessible deep-sea travel with a fleet of submersibles. Kind of similar to previous testimonies, he also called for a continuation of ocean exploration.
As I think back through everything that's happened over the last year, this was not supposed to happen, right? This shouldn't have happened. 5 people should not have lost their lives. 4 families should not be mourning their loved ones. And I don't know what happened. I don't know who made what decision when and based on what information. And honestly, I don't know if any of us will ever know this, despite all of your team's investigative efforts. I don't know if we'll ever know the answers to all of this. And regardless, as Renata said last week, none of this is going to bring our friends back. However, I hope that all of us can find some good in all of this sadness. I hope that we can find some silver linings. I hope we can find some valuable lessons learned that we can all carry forward and continue exploring the deep oceans.
That board is also set to hear from the company's former engineering director and officials from the American Bureau of Shipping. Testimonies are set to wrap on Friday. When we come back, we are seeing so many moves in Washington, D.C. to try to talk about finding peace and leadership around the globe to get peace between Israel and Lebanon. But continued attacks have happened even during this broadcast. We'll take you back there for the latest. We are watching in real time an increasingly tense situation in the Middle East. More than 270 killed, more than 1,000 injured in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon. Our partners at the BBC on the air with journalists close to not only the strikes, but also in Washington, D.C., where leaders talk about the situation. Let's listen in.
Well, joining me now is our senior international correspondent, Ola Guerin, in Beirut, and our State Department correspondent, Tom Bateman, who is in Washington. Ola, just give me a sense of where things are right now, because we are getting new lines all the time.
Well, this evening the death toll is rising hour after hour, and there is fear across this country. The intense Israeli bombardment started this morning at about 7 a.m. local time. Initially it was focused on the south, with targets there being pounded, but by this evening it had reached the Bekaa Valley in the east. Now, Israel has been saying, the IDF has been saying, that it has destroyed in a day what it took Hezbollah 20 years to build. The Prime Minister here, Najib Mikati, says that Israel's actions amount to a war of extermination. It is certainly not just Hezbollah fighters that are caught up in what's going on, but many, many terrified Lebanese civilians. Today, the roads from the south were chaotic, with people trying to get away, literally fleeing for their lives, fearful to such an extent that they were driving along both sides of the motorway, each direction. There was no to and from the south. It was just a full motorway, choked with traffic leaving the south, people saying that they had basically grabbed a few belongings and run for their lives. We had these Gaza-style warnings being given by the IDF telling people to go, but in many cases people had little or no time to actually try and get to safety. And those leaflets, there have been phone calls made, including phone calls to people here in Beirut, and you might be surprised to learn that the people who got those calls here included Lebanon's own information ministry. There was a call to the ministry telling people that they should get out and go, and leaflets have been dropped in the Bekaa Valley tonight telling people the same thing. So I would say across the country there is a great deal of fear. There is a sense that attacks could come anywhere at any time, and in the last hour or so here in Beirut we've had another Israeli airstrike focused on the Hezbollah stronghold of Dahia. We believe the target was another senior military commander. We're not sure if he has been killed, but we do know that in the past week or so, Israel has been trying to kill the senior-most leaders of Hezbollah, the military leaders, one by one.
Let me cross to Tom Bateman in Washington. Tom, we've heard from the Pentagon.
You've been listening in to coverage from our partners at the BBC as the Israeli airstrike kills nearly 300 and injures more than 1,000 in Lebanon. Meanwhile, leaders in Iran are quoted as saying that Israel is laying traps, what they call traps, to try to draw Iran into a wider regional conflict. CBS News 24/7 watching this story closely. All right, let's come back to the United States, watching the Midwest now. This is a live look at Cleveland, Ohio, where I understand people in Solon and elsewhere, neighborhoods around Cleveland, know they're going to get rained on.
Rained on. There's potential hail and heavy storms all throughout that region as we head into the coming days. So as we take a look at the floor map below me, starting off just in the Midwest, the Central Appalachian, and of course the Ohio Basin too. We're keeping a close eye on all that area as some heavy storms are coming within the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. Here's our live radar right now, just showing that active weather slowly sweeping its way off into the east. Daytime highs in Kansas City sitting in the 60s. We have 60s over into St. Louis and Chicago. 80s still in Cincinnati, but taking a look behind me, I want to dive into this storm specifically. Now, we do have severe weather widespread from North Carolina all the way over into states like Arkansas and Missouri too. Our severe weather outlook showing that marginal risk as we head into the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. This area is a big concern for us as these storms really start to enhance. Now, I want to show you this too, though, as we continue to watch these storm track off into the east. Believe it or not, those heavy storms are going to bring in more rain for eastern portions closer to North Carolina, and we're all the way over into Virginia and West Virginia too, compared to some of those inland spots. Taking a look at our total rainfall within the next 48 hours. We can anticipate close to around an inch just near Louisville. We're expecting over 2 inches of rain. The more east we go, closer to Greensboro, Roanoke, as well as Richmond. So those areas are going to be potentially dealing with some local flooding. Localized flooding is also possible just on the back end, though, with large hail anticipated as we head into the evening hours tonight in southern Indiana, Illinois, and northern portions of Tennessee. Over to you.
CBS News, Eye on America, keeps us honest in our promise to you to be in your communities telling your stories, how you face the challenges where you live. So let's think about this. The average rate on a 30-year mortgage, it is now at its lowest level since February of 2023. That's good news, right? Well, while that kind of drop could help revive the market for home sales, there's still a shortage of inventory or the number of houses available to actually buy, and that delays the dream for prospective homeowners. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleves shows us that that shortage is now leading to another spike, this time in the home rental market.
About 90 minutes outside Houston, Richard Bellote loves the view from his backyard.
Every morning I get up and I go outside with the dogs and I have a cup of coffee.
But he doesn't own this brand new house. In fact, it's not for sale. His Montgomery, Texas community is part of a rapidly growing trend in the U.S. housing market. Blocks of single-family homes built specifically to rent.
It's a good stepping stone.
Despite saving diligently to buy a home,
the interest rates are just too high to manage.
He and his fiancée feel priced out of their house hunt.
And just really kind of crossing our fingers that those rates go down.
Bellote is far from alone. A July poll found 86% of renters say they can't afford a home, and 54% believe it's unlikely they'll ever be able to. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger.
House prices have gone up by more than 40% in just 4 years. There are a lot of people out there who really want to be in homes, and they just can't afford to get there.
Built-to-rent communities began popping up in Phoenix during the Great Recession to meet that demand. People who couldn't buy a home but wanted a house. They are higher density and smaller cottage-sized homes, a literal cottage industry now spreading across the Sun Belt.
3 metro areas are really leading this built-to-rent trend here in the Phoenix area, Dallas, and Atlanta. But nationally last year, nearly 100,000 units were completed. That's an all-time high. And part of the drive behind it, the cost to rent, is less than the monthly cost to own.
We're really in the first couple innings of the BTR business.
Brent Long is leading the built-to-rent expansion for Christopher Todd Communities. He says renters stretch from Gen Z to baby boomers.
It's really renters by choice and renters by need.
If the traditional view of the American dream is you buy a home and that becomes your biggest asset, what does this do to that concept?
I don't think it takes it away. It solves some issues that are out there in terms of affordability, availability.
I just don't want to own right now.
Cassie Wilson rents by choice. Her community outside Phoenix is loaded with amenities, but free of homeowner responsibilities.
Do you feel like you're throwing money away?
No. I can live here in a house that is fully upkept by someone else. I would like to buy a house out here, but on the flip side, I still want to travel. This is just the perfect in-between for us.
While growing, these communities made up only about 8% of new residential construction last year. Housing advocates in Arizona welcome anything that helps address the housing shortage, but argue these communities aren't enough to push prices down. Back in Texas, Richard Bellote sees this built-to-rent house as buying time to save.
This gives us the opportunity to live in a nice place, a place that we like, a place that we can treat like a home, and hope that things get a little bit more manageable.
Home sweet home, as they wait for a break in the housing market. For Eye on America, I'm Chris Van Cleave in Phoenix.
So staying with issues that you face in your communities, you know, you've heard a lot on the campaign trail, the Trump team saying that crime has gone up under the Biden-Harris administration. That's sort of been a right hook to their opponents. Well, now we just got our hands on this. This is the left hook from the Biden-Harris administration. Statements from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden about a new FBI report saying actually crime in many sectors is down under their leadership. They're taking a little bit of a victory lap. Nicole Killian will be joining us in our next hour on CBS News 24/7 to break down that report and the response from the White House.